Jay, an arts manager, educator, writer, musician, producer, and professional daydreamer.
And I'm Miguel, a musician, arts administrator, educator, and lover of all things nerdy.
And this is Playblack, a podcast dedicated to nerddom, reviews, and hot takes on arts and culture and the human experience from the perspective of two melanated artists.
Just your typical anime bros, but with master's degrees.
And therapy.
So much therapy. All the therapy.
So much. Yeah. So when last we spoke, we were kind of doing a deeper dive into X-Men. And we got through the first 4 episodes, but there are 2 more that have been released at this point that we also want to talk about, 5 and 6. But I think before we get into those, it's pretty unanimously clear that X-Men 97 has been a runaway success. I believe it's the highest rated Marvel property on Rotten Tomatoes. It's been doing very well with the ratings and people tuning in. It feels very water coolery in a way that few shows are able to be nowadays. And all of this kind of like puts a strange highlight on the fact that like a week, mere days before it premieres, the creator is gone. Is suddenly no longer a part of the production. Was planned for them to be on the press tour. And I think even more strangely, there has been no official word on why this has happened. So Beau DeMaio wrote the first 2 seasons of X-Men 97 and was the executive producer. There have been kind of like 2 main reasons that folks are giving, but it's all conjecture. There's been nothing confirmed. Disney said they wouldn't even characterize it as a firing, which just made the whole thing even more confusing for me. And when news broke that Beau had been, I guess not fired, but was parting ways, he also deleted all of his social media for a long time. So it just felt like something had happened and no one knows what it is. And now with the runaway success the show has had, everyone is just like, this man should be back. Like, what really happened? Because it wasn't the work. The work is phenomenal. Right. So what went wrong? So, yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the 2 main rumors, and again, complete conjecture, no one has confirmed or denied anything. One was that he was very difficult on to work with, just in general, that the work environment that he created as a showrunner was not great. Which, I mean, again, we don't know anything, and we haven't heard his side of the story at all. We would love to hear his side of the story. And the other...
And no one he's worked with has said anything to affirm that either.
Yes. The other is that they were weirded out because Beau had an OnlyFans, and there was some, like feeling of like creeped out or something about that, which that, or like that Disney is a kind of a family friendly company and they don't fuck with that kind of thing. I don't know. It all sounds like it's not the actual reason. Since the amazing recognition of episode 5, which we'll be talking about in a bit specifically, he has since resurfaced on social media and has been actually commenting on episodes and interacting with seemingly
collecting his flowers.
Yeah, interacting with fans and also interacting with voice actors that were on the show and writers that were on the show.
Members of the creative team.
Just members of the creative team overall that without any issue. So we don't know exactly what happened. It's just an interesting situation because like it's a victory lap, but like everyone wants him back. We don't know what's going on. We would love to hear his story overall because it just seems like either some corporate BS, a misunderstanding, old school versus new school, what have you, who knows, but it's a mystery.
It is, and I feel like the drama of it all aside, what's kind of heartbreaking about it is this is a show designed, created by a queer Black man that has been met with runaway success. And I feel like we're talking about how he's on Twitter on this victory lap, but I want to hear his perspective. I want to hear why he's connected to these shows. I want to hear more about his process. I want to be able to discuss with him how those perspectives contributed to his storytelling, because there are already ways that feel obvious to me where like you can tell that a Black person and a queer person has been bringing very specific sensibilities to that. And so I feel like it's sad that we can't have those discussions and celebrate those perspectives that are so rare, a perspective that's so rare to have that kind of access to this level of storytelling with a property that's so important and beloved. Also, not to ignore that this is a time where a lot of people have felt, and we agree to an extent, that like the MCU is not the wealth of stories that it's been in a while, right? Like it's not shooting at the caliber that it first came out with. And so there also, this feels like a bit of a renaissance to the levels of when Marvel was at its peak. And again, not being able to talk to the person instrumental in like bringing all these eyes and passion and fervor and excitement around Marvel storytelling again. Also, with the fact that the next big thing that feels like it's going to happen in the MCU is the introduction of the X-Men.
Yeah.
Feels like a really wasted opportunity. So if there is something serious and there are real allegations there that resulted in the parting of ways, obviously that's fair and obviously that's right. And so like I don't myself feel comfortable like, bring the man back, because we don't know. And I'm very much a proponent of like not everything is our business.
True.
But this feels different because this feels like it's a professional something or other. And like this is not like what was happening behind closed doors in someone's private home, right? Like this was
right.
This clearly was a business decision around a property, and it's just like, well, I think I don't know. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's we're gonna leave it there for now. Hopefully, we'll hear more in the future. But we're gonna talk about episodes 5 and 6. And yeah, without further ado, here's the breakdown.
Yeah. So on last week's episode, we kind of talked about what a breakdown is for Playblack. And in our first season, primarily, it's when we take something and kind of go a bit deeper. We really look at it, spread it apart, and find the meat in there. We obviously there's so much to love and enjoy about these properties, and we will talk about that in these episodes as well. But very often, what really excites just Miguel and I is just going a little bit deeper and looking at the messages and the themes and the messiness sometimes that exists in these stories. So last week was about episodes 1 through 4. And now we're at episodes 5 and 6. So episode 5 left us all in a doozy, right?
Yeah.
So
Jay, give us a synopsis.
Yeah, my layman synopsis is this. So we need a vacation. Magneto has been absolved by his crimes with the UN, and now we're hearing that Genosha, a space in a country that is home exclusively to mutants, might now be allowed to enter the UN and be recognized as a member country. And so this is very exciting. And so the X-Men send over some of their folks to go check it out, to talk to folks, do all that kind of stuff, to get a lay of the land, all that good stuff. And it's wonderful. We see Nightcrawler. He's there like, oh my God, look, it's Nightcrawler. And the vibes are lit, right? It's like it's island paradise. Everyone's free to be who they are. They're with their mutant brethren. This episode is messy as hell because Gambit has been like peeping now because he's not stupid. Gambit has been peeping that something's going on with his woman and Magneto. And he's just like, we've been together for a long time, but like, you don't ever want to make it Facebook official. Like you always just being here, like trying to like not to define the relationship and like, whatever, I let you do that. But now you acting real shady with homeboy. Like what is up? And she's just like, well, we have a past and like, I can touch him basically. Like we found that out when we had a whole relationship, but then he was getting a little too radical. So I left him behind, but now like he softened up. And again, I could touch him. I can't touch you, my nigga. And he's just like, but there's more to love than just touching. She's like, for me, I want to bone. I want to be held and I want to bone. And I can't do that with you, Remy. And he's just like, I do not agree, but I respect your agency as a woman. And I will hold that boundary that you have put on. My heart is broken, but go ahead. I still love you. And she's just like, bet. And so she's with Magneto now. He's just like, yeah, we together. And he's just like, you know what? Be my queen. Rule Genosha with me. And she's just like, rule a queen? That's crazy. Okay. And so decides to like do it. Now, meanwhile, at the X Mansion, you know, Cyclops and Jean, in fairness, are really torn by everything that's happening, right? Like, so much drama has happened. Jean was just like, I was abducted and taken for a while, and I'm just coming back. There was a whole clone here. That clone had a baby with my man, and my man was in love with my clone, but like, that's strange. And like, I'm still like kind of sifting through my memories. What was I here for? When was I gone? She's just very confused and has a moment with Logan. And she's just like, and he's just like, nah, you got a man. And she's just like, oh, you so right. And I was just like, Logan, all you do is hang behind these two being like, hey, yo, Jean, hey, yo, Jean, hey, yo, Jean. And the one time Jean goes, yeah, he's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just like, what? Okay. So he's like, I'm going to respect the boundaries of your relationship, even if you won't. And she's just like, bet, cool. So now she goes to talk to her man, and her man is upset for a woman that Miguel will talk about in a moment, where he was like having this interview, and he's just all his feelings. He's just like, y'all ain't shit. This whole situation ain't shit. I need to go be with my feelings. And so now he's talking to Jean, and he's just like, it's so hard, Jean. You know, I had a baby, and like, it's all tough. And they start like kissing, and then Jean walks in, and we go, wait a minute. He wasn't talking to Jean. He was talking to Madeline and having an affair of the mind. And Jean's just like, hey, yo, what is this? And like psychic slaps homegirl, be like, not my man, girl. We had a deal. We came to some agreement. We had peace. And now you come back into my home to ruin shit, mess shit up. And Scott's just like, you know, like, it's just, I'm sorry, but like, it's tough. I was with her. We had a baby. I had a baby with you. And she's just like, do you love me, Jean? Or do you love me, Scott? Do you love the memory of me? Okay. And he's just like, that's cruel. So anyway, messiness and drama. So we think that's what this episode is, right? Mess, drum. Oh, look, there goes Emma, the White Queen. And then all of a sudden, Cable shows up, and Cable's just like, start the music, y'all. Because they turn. They're like, they're all in the club together, having a great old mutant time. And he's just like, start the music. And then he runs into Madeline, who is his mom, because Cable is Nate, all grown up from the future, and he's time traveling. And he's just like, I couldn't stop it. And she's like, stop what? And he's like, I'm sorry, Mom. And then he disappears, and then fuck shit starts. And so now, you know, Master Mold comes, and there's bombing everywhere. There's this huge terrorist attack. Niggas is dying left and right. It's horrible. And the X-Men are trying to stop it. And long story short, they do not. A devastating attack happens, and so many lives are lost, including the loss of our homeboy Gambit, who never knows that after Rogue was like, yeah, I'll be your queen, she came to the realization of like, the love that she felt for Remy did surpass this need for touch, because they touch spirits, they touch hearts, even if they can't touch skin. And so she's just like, you know what, you is my man. But before she can tell him this, before she could say, nigga, I choose you, this bombing happens, and our poor man dies in service, but not before going out like a badass and blowing Master Mold up and being like, the name's Gambit, remember the name, right? And then to double it down, it appears as if Magneto also dies, and it's just horrible. And finally, after not being able to touch the man she loved for so long, she's finally able to. But even when she does, she can't feel him, because Gambit is dead. And we felt dead inside watching that episode. What did I miss?
So, I mean, that was amazing. I mean, I'm just going to, this round of applause for Jay, because I'm gonna edit in that a round of applause because that was excellent. That was amazing. A couple things. Madeline Pryor is a UN kind of like ambassador with the island of Genosha. So that's how Madeline kind of came
That's
back
part
into
of
the
her
story.
finding herself and her own
Yeah,
thing.
so she kind of figured that out. The kind of Council of Mutants, the leadership of Genosha, asks Magneto if he would be their president or king or kind of leader person, whatever. And he says yes on one condition, that Rogue or somebody, a partner, rules with him to counterbalance, someone from the X-Men specifically. Nightcrawler shows up, so Nightcrawler's back in the team, which is dope. So because Nightcrawler's been doing cool Genosha shit. And then what's happening back at the X Mansion? So there is a kind of docu team having a whole series of interviews with the X-Men as this big Genosha coming into the UN thing is happening. So there is a journalist kind of journaling conversations with Beast and Jean and Scott. So that's how kind of all of this stuff comes up. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The ball, because it was kind of a ball that was happening, was just really crazy dope. It had really big vibes. Magneto and Rogue can touch, as you said, but no one knew that they could do that. That was kind of important. Everyone around them was all the mutants were like, "What do you mean? That's crazy! Y'all can touch? That's insane." And then everyone dies. Yeah, it's really sad. The whole thing is extremely sad. The entire mutant leadership team, as far as we know, at the end of episode 5, is gone. So there's a huge vacuum of power. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, and we don't know who sent the Sentinels, and this crazy mega master mold. We don't know who did that at the end of this episode, and everyone is in utter shock. It's a very heavy episode.
It is, and there obviously was very much like this intense shift that happened in terms of tone about halfway through, and that's something that Bo specifically came back to talk about. We'll get to that in a moment. But one of the first things I wanted to talk about this breakdown was it was very clear to these mutants that they were not accepted in human society, right?
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of discrimination, there was a lot of violence, there was all these pieces. And so the thinking was, if we can't coexist with you, then we will at least find a place where we can be free together, away from everybody. So now we're out of your business. We're not bothering you. We're not messing with you. And we could be together. And it was really the definition of a safe space. And I think, there's been a lot of pushback over the term safe space for a long time. But I feel like, honestly, that's because it's been co-opted by the same people who co-opt woke, who co-opt snowflakes, who very often are the things that they claim to be against and don't really understand what those terms mean in the first place. And the idea of a safe space is to have a space filled with the people that share things with you that allow you to just be. It's so funny. In the break we just took, I just saw a video by Brene Brown, who's a sociologist, and she was saying that in the research she was doing, she was surprised to find that the opposite of belonging was fitting in. And she says the difference is that when you try to fit in, you're assessing, who should I be? Who are these people? How should I show up? And you change yourself to be a part of this group. Whereas when you belong, you are required to be who you are, the fullness of who you are, and are accepted as you are. And these safe spaces are spaces of belonging where you can just be and find acceptance and find community, where you don't feel like you have to do the work and the task of changing and molding and honestly dishonoring yourself to fit in, right? And so they had that in Genosha. And what was really sad is that you have that beautiful space and even that gets attacked and they won't even let you be there. Yeah. And so then the question becomes, if I were a mutant, if you won't let me be around you, and I can't be around you, but now I can't also be away from you with my people.
Mm-hmm.
What is left? It really feels like you want to erase me. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just really sad that Genosha wasn't allowed to be the haven and that beautiful healing community of space that it was proving to be for these folks. And it really broke my heart.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the beginning of this episode kind of reminded me of the uh, my understanding of at least the drag scene in the like 90s.
Mm.
Have you seen Pose at all, Jay?
No, but I know of it.
So for those of you who don't know the show Pose, it's an FX show showing the queer community in the 90s, specifically the kind of drag ball scene where people would have like these competitions and dance and be free and have fun and be themselves basically during in the 90s in the middle of the HIV epidemic, right? And it watching all these mutants just like children running around like just exploring their powers, people dancing in the streets.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, there's huge inflation. It's really everything's expensive there because they don't have resources, et cetera, et cetera. Now there was that scene in the 90s that I was just talking about, but like it's a place where people that belong to that group can just be and exhibit themselves as they see themselves. Which is a
Mm-hmm.
super powerful thing to see. And even the ball, everyone decked out in all those crazy and the to the nines in their outfits. I was like, yeah, this is giving all these kind of queer vibes, where
Mm-hmm.
everyone is just like completely themselves in every way. I don't know if I can say that
Mm-hmm.
if I can say that more. They were just themselves. Um,
Yeah.
it's a very powerful thing to see. And what's interesting is the duality between that and what's happening over at the mansion. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
at the mansion,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
like Scott and some of the X-Men that didn't go to Genosha on this mission um, to ratify Genosha's entrance into the UN, they're basically like pleading. Um, they are I think the point of the interview is to like show that they're just like everyone else. The point of the interview is to show that they fit in. If we're
It's
using
PR.
your yeah, right,
Mm-hmm.
your analogy. And
Mm-hmm.
it was really really interesting to me because like Cyclops, who is a um Boy Scout character, who is a huge like he is the model X-Man. He's the first X-Man. He's Xavier. Oh, no, he's not
Right.
Xavier's first student, but he is one of Xavier's first students, right?
First
Um,
batch. Mm-hmm.
he is being asked by this interviewer about his son, who he had just had to give away, um, and he kind of lies about it because he doesn't want to bring it up. It's a very painful thing for him. He's going through a tough time with his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and the interviewer
It's
pushes.
fresh.
And we pulled this quote because it's just so good. Because when darkness comes from Scott, it's fucking real. The interviewer
Mm.
kind of finds Scott in the lie and says, "Scott, I came here today to give the X-Men a chance to show the world that mutants are just like us people, normal. And you lie. Why lie? First off, really quick, I hate the framing of that question. It is
Yeah.
so like it puts you in a complete box. There's no way to
Very
for
patronizing.
Scott to
Mm-hmm.
like answer in any way in any way that shows his humanity other than him being angry. So Scott
Mm.
responds, "Because you're normal." Interviewer's like, "Excuse me?" Scott says, "I said because you're normal. You're ungrateful. We fight, risk our lives for you. Evil mutants, robots, crazy aliens. I gave him up." He's talking about Nathan. "I gave him up
Mm-hmm.
because you can't say thank you. Because I have to stomach your questions and prove that I'm a person. I lie because the truth is we're not nothing like you. And thank God, because it's the only reason you people are still alive." And it's like why? Like, where's the lie even? Like, it's it's insane.
Because not seconds later, you all blow us up. And
Yeah,
Scott is just like, if I really was like you would be dead. You would
right.
have a real problem on your hands. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned safe spaces or creating safe spaces as a major theme, and I felt righteous anger was another big theme of this episode,
Mm-hmm.
between Scott, and also between Magneto. Um, there was someone pointed this out. I was watching an interview on a YouTube channel called Screen Crush, and so a Jewish person pointed out that um, Magneto made a whip out of trains. Magneto, the Holocaust survivor, made a whip out of chains to beat up Nazi robots. Uh,
Mm.
like, which is like I didn't even like think of that connection.
Mm.
And he, uh, I don't even see him being angry. He's just resolute in his pursuance of protecting his own and protecting the
Right.
weakest among them, which
Yeah.
ends up being the Morlocks, which we'll get into
Yeah.
another theme. But yeah, what
Yeah.
else, Jay? This episode it just kept going.
Oh my god. Yeah, I love that point about Magneto because I think sometimes when you see these really radical figures, some of them, not all of them, some of them become so disconnected from the people they represent and the people they are speaking on behalf of that they become like a cult of personality. They become kind of singular and obsessive around how they react to the world. And what I loved the most about seeing Magneto in this episode was there was no ego, there was no avenging. It was just him understanding that his strength was there to protect these mutants. And it would have been so easy for Magneto over all these years and decades to become so self centered, but what he has never lost is his love and care for his people. And I think that was really beautiful. As I mentioned, that episode really flips, and it feels very jarring to
Mm-hmm.
go from this celebratory, vibrant space into this really dark, morose, traumatic space they're in. And Bo shared a statement. And so this is a little bit lengthy, but here it is. A lot of questions, and so I'll momentarily break silence to answer. Episode 5 was the centerpiece of my pitch to Marvel in November 2020. The idea being to have the X Men mirror the journey that any of us who grew up on the original show have experienced since being kids in the 90s. The world was seemingly a safer place for us, where a character like Storm would comment on how skin based racism was quaint in one man's worth. For the most part, to our young minds, the world was a simple place of right and wrong, where questions about identity and social justice had relatively clear cut answers. Then 9/11 happened, and the world turned against itself. Things weren't so safe anymore. Grassroots populist movements began to rise around the world as a whole nation struggled to deal with collective trauma and fracture at the seams of every diverse demographic. The effects we still feel today and have only been exacerbated by more collective traumas like COVID or several recessions. For me personally, 9/11 was also when I came out of the closet to my family and realized not everyone would accept me. It's when I entered college and noticed that certain groups avoided me, or that a Supercuts in Tallahassee refused to service me because they didn't do ethnic haircuts. Reality, as Jubilee found out in episode 4, got very real and very scary. This happened to many people. We had kids and got jobs with high stakes. Suddenly, it wasn't enough for us to survive. We had responsibilities and people whose survival depended upon us meeting those responsibilities. We were growing up. If you were like me, you would actually watch old episodes of the OG cartoon to comfort myself and take yourself back. God knows I did during COVID. But just like Roberta warned Jubilee, there's a danger of living in the past and clinging to nostalgia. There's a danger to not letting go of who we think we are. As Cyclops and Jean are learning, it leaves us stagnant and dangerously unaware of a future we didn't anticipate. Yes, it looked like Gambit's story was going a specific direction. The crop top was chosen to make you love him. Him pulling off his shirt was intentional. There's a reason he told Rogue any fool would suffer her hand in a dance, even if it ended up not being him suffering. But if events like 9/11, Tulsa, Charlottesville, or Pulse nightclub teach us anything, it's that too many stories are often cut far too short. I partied at Pulse. It was my club. I have so many great memories of its awesome white lounge. It was, like Genosha, a safe space for me and everyone like me to dance and laugh and be free. I thought about this a lot when crafting this season and this episode, and how the gay community in Orlando rose to heal from that event. Like many of us who grew up on the OG cartoon, the X Men have now been hit hard by the realities of an adult and unsafe world. Life has happened to them, and they, like we did, will have to decide which parts of themselves they will cling to and which parts they'll let go of in order to do what they've been telling humanity to do: face an uncertain future they never saw coming. As Trask told Cyclops in the premiere, you have no idea what it's like to be left behind by the future. Now, the X Men do. And like each of us, they'll have to weigh whether this time is for social justice, or as Magneto preached at his trial, a time for social healing.
I don't care what he
So
did.
he knew what he was doing, is what he's saying.
Yeah, I don't care what he did. Bring him back. Bring him back. Like,
Yeah.
goddamn.
Yeah.
You put that under awakening and radicalization.
Yeah.
And I think it's so apt because it's when you see people's real intentions that you realize it puts you in a it's you or me situation. Like there's no world where humans in this case, or at least the humans that tried to who directed this attack, can coexist with mutants. So it actually makes the math real simple. It's either you or me, and radicalization means it has to be me. So
Yeah.
like we haven't really seen the aftermath reaction to how the mutants are going to respond. We don't know if Magneto's alive. We don't know what's going on, but like we can maybe predict that there are going to be some people that say it's flat out evolutionary wartime.
Yeah.
And like war is never a good thing. I don't know how you respond to someone punching you in the face without punching them back.
And I think that's really exemplified by the last line of his statement, which is this a time for social justice or social healing? I think as we were preparing for this conversation, one thing that really broke my heart, I was thinking, we talk, and I went on a little rant last time about how these stories are allegorical, right? They're about these issues and topics told in a fantastical way. But when I sat down and said, if there were mutants here in our society, in our reality, how would they be treated? And the sad reality, I honestly think it'd be worse. Because I'm just like looking at all the things we do to each other with such random and sometimes often made up differences, and how we justify those differences to really commit atrocities against one another, to then have actual beings that are another species that do feel like a step forward on the evolutionary thing. It breaks my heart to think about what they would face. And I think as we look around again in this current world, our real world, at all of the issues that we're facing, I think there's always that tension of like justice or healing. And I know for me, I'm somebody, I'm trying to think of how far to go here. I do a lot of workshops on what's called social change roles and the movement ecology. And the movement ecology basically looks at there being four distinct paths to change. One is mass protests. It's very disruptive. It's all about getting eyes on a particular issue and really focusing us on making sure that we can't look away from something, that this is a problem, it exists, and it needs our attention. And then you have things like inside game, or leveraging dominant institutions. And that's all about how do we use the systems that already exist to our advantage to make change. So that's things like voting. It's things like defund the police, right? Which is not abolish them, but like how do we shift what already exists to work better for us? Then we have personal transformation. how do we take these larger conversations and these larger efforts of change and bring them down to a more personal space to say, you could change whatever law you want. But if that person believes that he is better than that person, we will never have sustainable change. We have to address that critical piece. And then the last one is radical imagination. What is the world we're trying to create? We can keep talking about what doesn't work with this one, what we're trying to change here. But if we're not moving towards something, then we're not fixing anything sustainably. And so very often when introducing this framework, a lot of people feel like there's one or the other, right? That they feel like they align more with just one. But the truth is, it requires all of these pieces simultaneously. We have to know where we're going. We have to sit in the truth and acknowledge what the problem is. We have to use these systems that exist, because if systems do not exist, there is just chaos. And we also have to be doing the personal work to make sure that things happen. But it still is a tension of just like, what does this moment require? And how, just like you said, when we're hit with violence, when we're hit with a constant dehumanization, how do we still find space to imagine in the middle of that? How do we still find space to try to heal, to try to have conversations, to transform, and not just react with anger and violence and want to shut it all down? I think it's very hard, but I think a beautiful thing that I've learned in this process is hope and dreaming and healing, while they seem so soft and they seem so like foo-foo or whatever, those are the hardest things to do in these moments. And I think, I'm sure we're going to see elements of that show up on this journey for the X-Men. And it's so easily to dismiss that, because it feels like to focus on joy or hope and all these things in the middle of this trivializes our pain. But I think allowing ourselves to not be trapped by our traumas and held hostage to our anger is really difficult and really vital to allowing us to live. And I think Toni Morrison said something about how with racism, it's always about you explaining. It's always about you wasting your time responding to something, and you never get to live and you never get to be. And I think the most radical act that we can do in the midst of all this pain and chaos that we're always in is find a way to live and not center the shit that's happening to us all the time. That doesn't mean to ignore it. It doesn't mean that we don't address it. But I don't think that we should be centering and be bound by it fully. And I think very often when we get into that combative place, we make our lives about our pain and not about why we're here on this planet, which is to live, to explore, to have all these feelings.
Wow, Jay. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. And I think the show couldn't have said that better. Because, like, really, like, putting on two different sides of the coin, the Genosians having this, the first half of this, a wonderful moment, a zenith, like a climbing of the mountain, a moment where it feels like everything's going to be different for a positive reason this time. With Scott in the slums of it, basically trying to prove his humanity to a reporter that's actually pretty sympathetic to his cause, but is just completely ignorant to what she's even like saying, or how she's completely patronizing somebody.
It's also like that Toni Morrison interview where she's just like, you don't even realize how the question you're asking is racist. And like that interview, like, isn't even aware of like how she's functioning is like a problem. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And in the comics, that interview, the journalist, I think ends up being Beast's girlfriend. That's why he was blushing.
Oh, wow.
So like, she's obviously someone who's like an ally, but even allyship is a very tenuous thing in our universe and in this one, right? So it's really interesting. Heading towards maybe some still heavy but more positive stuff. The Morlocks. We didn't really talk about the Morlocks very much throughout this review overall. The Morlocks are a group of mutants that are they're kind of slum dwellers. They kind of always live in sewers. And I think the first or second season of the original series, Storm kind of first season. Storm became like their leader in an offshoot kind of way, and they could have like been in the mansion, but they were like, actually, nah, we're just gonna chill out in these slums because we actually like it out here. And it's like, all right, whatever, you do your thing.
Sure.
But they after they were saved in like the second episode by Magneto, were kind of brought over to Genosha as a safe space for them to like reside, right? Um, and during these attacks, they're still kind of off in these slums where they're hard to save, they're hard to get to, and they don't feel that the X-Men, who are kind of this like a kind of upper class of mutant, um, they don't think that the X-Men are going to come to save them when shit hits the fan. And there's this Jay eloquently put it in our notes, a rejection of internal stratification, where the X-Men come in style specifically to save the Morlocks, because I think mainly because Magneto had promised Leech, one of the kind of smaller, kind of honestly pretty adorable Morlocks, that he shouldn't be afraid anymore. And he immediately, when he saw the danger, Magneto was like, the Morlocks over there, they're not going to be able to be saved. We have to go get them, and they do. And it's a kind of a beautiful moment. And Magneto goes out, supposedly, we don't know, still trying to save Leech, the kind of tyrant. Is he like a reptilian kind of guy?
He looks, yeah, like
yeah. This reptilian Morlock character. He's just trying to stave off the Master Mold and the Sentinels to save this one mutant. And I forget what he says. I forget what he says in German. Do you remember?
It was something around like, I'll always protect you. You never need to feel whatever. Yeah, something still on lines of that protection.
Don't be scared. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think he says don't be scared in German. Again, this former Holocaust survivor, now mutant, saying this in his native tongue to a young person of his community. It's just so powerful on so many different levels. And while it's incredibly sad because at the end of it seems like they still lost, it is a moment to be aware of that, even though there are always these little kind of ladders of human beings within any like bits of society, that we can always make that choice to reach the hand over the aisle and bring each other up, because we ultimately still have this struggle that we have to do together, to overcome any semblance, to get to any semblance of normalcy and joy and love. So it's a heavy episode. There's not a lot of positive in it. But there's also some messy shit. Starts off in the first 5 minutes, Jean, a married woman, just Scott Summers, just kisses Logan. Just does it. Yes, she's confused, memories, I don't know what's going on. But it's like, what are you? And then she yells.
In fairness, that didn't come from nowhere, because in the episode, what was it, episode 3? He's trying to help her remember, if we remember. And basically, like, she's like, you feel like this for me? And he's just like, yeah, dude. Like, his love comes in there. And I feel like that for sure plays into this moment where she's just like, I know how he feels about me. I'm feeling confused. I feel some kind of way about him. And he's just like, no, stop. And it's like, oh,
but okay. my confusion with Jean is like, Jean, how are you going to literally kiss Logan and then be so furious?
She was on her high horse a little bit. I was like, it is giving very much hypocrisy, Jean. You just Cyclops, put your mouth on someone else.
How are you going to be so furious when Cyclops is talking to the mother of his child? After you just like, because I like, again, it's messy. It's very obviously she was abducted. It's a very traumatic thing. No one's giving each other space to like figure this out. Because they're under so much pressure and oppression. So it kind of makes sense in that way. But yeah, Scott is over here like telecheating as well. Emma Frost because
Overhears
she's
everything.
also a very a very powerful telepath, overheard the entire thing, and it's like, ooh, the tea. We already had this Rogue, Gambit, and Magneto thruple, not thruple, love triangle deal. And honestly, Gambit like handled it so much more maturely than I thought he was going to.
A real
And
man.
actually saves Rogue, which we didn't talk about in your recap. Rogue was about to I think after Rogue sees Magneto supposedly go down, she goes after the Master Mold herself and is about to get shot out of the sky. And I think Gambit threw a motorcycle at her. Like he threw a motorcycle at her to blast her out of the way of everything, and then takes it into his own hands and gives the sacrifice blow to take down the Master Mold. It was a heavy episode, man. No one was okay after it. But I think it's time for us to move on to another story of growth.
Yeah.
And
so episode 6 comes in. Did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
Episode 6 comes in, and if you recall, Miguel made this clear last episode. While the X-Men are grieving Xavier and the humans believe him dead, the X-Men were more so grieving the fact that he is gone, because he was taken up into space. And this episode starts galactically. Okay. And we're coming from the trauma of like, everyone's dead. It's so sad. And Charles is like, yeah, I might get married. Yeah, like I'm in love. Like I'm here having a good old time with sis. And we see like a really cool MCU moment where we have Ronan the Accuser. And one thing about the 90s is that like the MCU, while they had all these, it wasn't MCU back then, but the Marvel universe had all these like shows, there was a lot more like cross pollination of characters and people. It really did feel like a shared universe. And so this is kind of the first time that happens where we have Ronan and we're like going galactic and we're hearing about the Kree and we're like, oh yeah, this is X-Men, but also Kree and shit. So anyway, we meet some folks in the Shire Empire, and basically it's time to move forward in his relationship with this Empress, and she announces to everybody like, hey y'all, as you know, I've been seeing somebody, and like, you know, we gonna take it to the next level. Like I fuck with him, he fuck with me, like we about to get married. Just wanted to give y'all the heads up. And her sister's just like, no, excuse me. And one of her advisors is like, also hard no. Where he's from is trash. Okay, you're marrying beneath you. And her sister literally says Xavier would see us fuck with his Milky Way ghetto. Okay, and like we not trying to go over there. They are beneath us. They are dirty. We roll our windows up when we pass. No. And you're trying to bring that here? Absolutely not. You need to focus. We're in the midst of like kind of coming out of one whole crazy tragedy. And the Empress is just like, bitch, I see you. You don't care about this. You just want my role. And like, you can't have my crown. I'm holding on to this. This my man. Look, he can walk now. We good. And so her sister's just like, okay, no, it's fine. It's fine. If this is so good, he needs to prove himself. And so I'm going to do this ancient rite or whatever. And Charles is just like, okay, yeah, let's go. I'll do this ancient rite. She's like, bet. What I want you to do is lose all your memories of Earth and your little X-Men. And he's just like, woo, woo, woo.
Oh, hey, whoa.
Hold up. That's a little dramatic. And she's just like, that's what I thought. He's like, wait, nah. I didn't say I wasn't going to do it. I just said that was a lot. And so, you know, he tried to go back and forth. And Empress is just like, you know what, this could be, I know this is hard for you, but this could be a good thing. Like, you'd be free and untethered. Like, and since actually some bangers of just like, the important part of being an educator is to make sure that the people you're teaching are self-sufficient. There has to be at some point a release They have to be their own people.
Right.
You can't keep coddling them. You can't keep holding on to them. And maybe this is a way that you could let them take that next step and be their own people, and you can have your own life. And he was just like, that's true, but only if I've taught them everything I could teach them. Yes, I know these niggas is 30 something years old, but maybe there's still more I can, like, Charles, shut up. Okay. So it's like, you sound stupid right now. So, and if there is anything more that you have left to teach them, sounds like you were a bad teacher. But anyway, he's just like, fine, I'll do it. Starts going in there, but then the sister's just like, nah, fuck this. I'm gonna come up in here. I'm a lead, and tries to coup. And now there's a whole fight happening. And Charles is like, I really been acting like I'm not a mad, powerful telepath. Like, this is stupid. Takes off his helmet. He's just like, sit down. I'm gonna teach y'all a lesson. And basically, it's just like, y'all are problematic. Okay. And it's really time that I teach y'all a little something, because y'all don't know how to behave. Amen. And as he's teaching, having his little flexy moment, he gets wind that the worst has happened. And some of his X-Men have passed on. And he's just like, oh no, I need to go home now. And his Empress is just like, but bae, like, if you do that, you're literally saying what they said you would do. You making me look real stupid. So like, why would you do that? He's just like, I'm sorry. I don't really care. Like, my kids is dead. I need to go home. Turn the car around. Okay. Now, as that is all happening, Storm is with Forge. She has mostly forgiven his transgressions, but now this demon is still attacking. Forge is wounded. He looking all like ghastly pale and shit. Got this magic wound, and he's just like, I'm not gonna last much longer. And she's just like, what can I do for you, bae? And he's just like, well, there is this plant in some cave. If you go get that, might use it to help me. And she's just like, okay, we'll go together. And so they go together. She gets attacked by the demon, and she gets, triggered with her claustrophobia, and basically has a moment, which we'll talk about a little bit, where she has to realize some things and remember how bad of a bitch she is and own some messy things about herself. But once she does, she, like Sailor Moon, begins to rise again, flies into the air because she has her magic again. And again, like Sailor Moon, magically transforms into an outfit. And we don't talk about it, okay? She transforms, and that's just the truth. It is what it is. Does a little pose. And then while her man is dying, it's just like, I'm going to fly around a little bit. I'm going to run with the horses. I'm going to just have a little moment to myself just for a second, because I haven't been feeling like myself for a moment. You know what I mean? And then she's like, right, my nigga. And so then goes back there, helps him out, and now he's good. And that feels really good. So, okay. Miguel, what did I miss?
That's really good. So the Empress's name is Lilandra. And there's a whole history of the Shiara people. They're like bird people that you get if you watch the original series. But we're not going to get into that. Basically, she's the Empress. Her sister, who goes by Deathbird, evil much. Her sister's always been conniving and wanting the throne, but like kind of has been like, okay, I'll serve you for now, but like as soon as I see a chance, etc., right. etc.
The block is hot, but yeah.
Right. Something that we didn't talk about last time was Forge got attacked at the end of the last episode. So he shows up here all kind of messed up. And what they have to go get is a rare cactus, because Forge's mom was magical. And
he's thrown out to the spells. He looked like he had the dark hold and some spell book at one point. I was like, okay, magic.
So this is another low key MCU connection, because the magic that he uses does look like how Doctor Strange and all the people in his order of sorcerers use magic. So it's actually a really cool and interesting connection. He sends, or he doesn't send Rogue, but he says that there is a rare cactus that has magical properties in like a plateau. And if y'all didn't know, Rogue is actually very claustrophobic, does not like being in tight spaces.
Storm.
Jesus, thank you, Storm. Storm is very claustrophobic. So she's powerless. She's claustrophobic, and she has to like force her way up through a very small space to get to this place where the demon, the adversary, is kind of plaguing her and like really like picking at all of her emotions. And um, uh, once Rogue Storm accepts herself again, and accepts who she really is and the duality of herself, she is able to defeat the adversary and yes, fly around for about 5 minutes while her man is literally dying. It's pretty hilarious.
Takes the scenic route.
Yeah, seriously. After they get all that settled and Storm saves Forge, um, she sees on the TV what happened to Genosha as well,
Right.
which is huge. And there is an after credit scene where you reveal that it was partly orchestrated, at least by Mr. Sinister, with the help of Bolivar Trask, who is the person who created the initial Sentinels. And it seems like his plan is to instigate a war between humans and mutants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, like we talked about last episode, seems likely because how you respond to that, right? I think really quickly to talk about some of the themes in this episode, starting with Xavier. My first job out of college, I was working at this program where they went to a public school in a town in Boston that had a lot of immigrants. And we were working with middle school students who had English as their second language, and the hope was that working with them through the summer, we would try to increase their literacy rates to get them closer to caught up when the school year began. And so we had the teachers from the school paired with BU professors, and then 3 of us were brought in as art specialists. And there was a BU professor who was kind of overseeing it all, and she was talking to us about the immigrant experience and some of the pedagogy that goes behind all of these pieces. And what she introduced to us that I thought was really fascinating was when you have people that are immigrants coming into a new culture, there are 3 opportunities of like how they react. The first is that they don't adjust at all. They kind of like in their homes or whatever, keep their own languages, keep their own cultures, and never really like find a place within this new society that they're in. Then there's those folks who assimilate, where they leave their cultures behind and fully give themselves over to this new culture. Their language is lost, their culture is lost, they just become where they are now. But that the real goal and the healthiest thing is integration, where they're able to hold on to their cultural identity and access and be a part of the cultural landscape of this new place that they're in. And so what we see with Charles is this really xenophobic, low-key like racist society that's asking him to assimilate, right? They're saying literally forget everything, forget who you are, forget your experiences, forget your culture, and then we'll accept you. And it's really problematic, and I think he took on a forceful way of trying to be like, nah, this don't work, this isn't cool. And I was going to cut this for time, but now I've kind of led into it, so I am going to say it. He has this little speech where he talks about the power of your empire is in truth the harvest of stolen worlds. Younger cultures that, had they not been tilled to death, would now be empires rivaling your own. Fearing this, you strike at the knees and claim you could help them walk again, but only if they assimilate and submit. Which brings us to the conclusion: the Shire Empire is a snake oil racket. And I feel like what he's really talking about is colonization, right?
Yeah,
It's
100%.
these people who go to these other cultures, cut them down, and then introduce religion, and then introduce loans, right? And now all these years later, you have like Caribbean countries that still are in debt to these people that stole wealth and money from them. And you have these other cultures that like now are called third world because people stole their wealth and resources from them, and now are trying to introduce themselves as the savior. Oh, well, now we can give you aid, and now we can give you whatever. And so it speaks to this insidious practice where instead of looking and exploring how to enjoy and share in the strengths of other cultures and other worlds, people who are threatened by that instead cut them down, steal from them, tell them now that they are the savior and that they have to adopt all of their beliefs and their cultures and leave their own behind. It's when the colonizers like to say, you can't speak that language anymore. You got to learn our language, right? Like all these little pieces come up. So it's a really dangerous and insidious thing. And it was interesting to see that through a galaxy. While in fairness, though, we are the Milky Way ghetto. It is ghetto. It's like in that one little thing you ate that one little thing, but you still problematic.
Yeah, and again, the stories are balanced because there's moments where Storm is bringing Forge to the plateau where it seems like there are all these old Union from the Civil War, the American Civil War, Union armaments and supplies and weapons and stuff. Storm's like, why did you let them like use this place, basically, right? And he was like, yeah, I mean, the colonizers, like, they promised that we would be safe, basically. They promised that we would be okay. And what we got was, blankets and smallpox and all this, like, there it brings it from a galaxy level all the way down to a very human place in our fairly recent history. And again, like you said in our prior episode, it's really important to have these interracial couples talking about this stuff with a shared understanding of what it means to be oppressed on multiple levels. And it's just great writing. it's really, really excellent.
It is. And it's been so heavy, but I was joking with Miguel when we were prepping that, like, this is where the sermon happens because, right now it's been sad and bad, like it's been so dark. But what happens, hallelujah, at the darkest point in our lives, right? We don't stay in that darkness, right? We don't stay in the trauma and sadness. Where we turn is to the light, because there is always, amen, light at the end of that tunnel. And so what we see now is this beautiful metaphor where Storm finally sits and acknowledges, and this is the other part, here's the word, we cannot get to the light until we first go through and accept the dark. Storm was not able to heal until she told the truth of how she was feeling, the shame that she had felt, the guilt that she felt for wanting to explore what it meant to be human and not to be othered for a moment. And then she literally has to crawl, hallelujah, through a dark tunnel. And on the other side of that tunnel was freedom and acceptance. And once she was able to accept who she was, it started off real small. It didn't start with the lightning. There was a breeze, Father. There was a breeze around her hands. And then the wind kicked up. Amen. And then it was the fullness of everything shooting up into the sky, right? And what did she say when she was afraid? She said, let them thunder, for I am what?
Lightning.
I am lightning. Hallelujah, Father. And so this was such a hype moment for all of us. And I think it was so strategically placed at this point too, because we really have been broken down and there was so much that was happening. And Xavier had just kind of reminded us of the loss that we experienced with the X-Men in that last episode. And to have Storm kind of be the face of this rebirth and this re-energizing and honestly this feeling of hope, because they didn't have their goddess with them.
No, they didn't.
When this whole shit went down,
it wouldn't have gone down like that.
She was not there. And so I feel like this was a beacon in so many ways. But again, I think the piece that was critical here was Forge had tried to heal Storm before. She had been hit with the ray, all that stuff, and it didn't work. And what was interesting to me in this one was there was no particular moment, like externally, why that would be the moment she got her powers back, right? It very much felt like there had been a psychosomatic block.
Yes.
She had been holding herself back because she had not accepted some things about herself. And once she was able to say, like, I felt these things, I felt this shame, I felt this darkness, and now I own it and I'm not going to be bound by it. That's when she allowed herself to reconnect to all of these pieces and find and become that more fuller her. And even her hair was fuller. So, again, this is a Storm standing household. We love Ororo. I was just looking up some metal posters that I will be putting up in my room to celebrate her. And yeah, I think so many of us lie to ourselves, right? And I think sometimes it's what you said actually a few episodes ago about growth only happens in discomfort, and it was finally Storm allowing herself to sit in her discomfort and to sit in that messiness, that she was able to find herself again and become the goddess that she's always been. So it was really, really, really beautiful.
Jay, I think with that, man, we got to wrap this up because
okay. Hallelujah.
No, because I can't follow that. I don't want to follow that. I think that was a beautiful a beautiful summation of how excellent the show has been so far. We're gonna cover the rest of it as generally as it comes out. But this has been our review of episodes 1 through 4, and today 5 and 6 of the first half. I think it's 10 episodes. Am I right?
I think so too. Yeah, maybe
the first half and a bit
so.
Of X-Men 97. And with that, we hope you've enjoyed the Playblack. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts because it helps. You can follow us everywhere at Playblack Podcast. Still can't say it right. And make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. There are some facial expressions in this one that you're going to want to see from Jay specifically during that sermon. You almost made me believe.
Can I just say
Jesus?
Yes. Oh yeah. Also, yeah, I'm agnostic, so it's hilarious. I do want to say, last time we filmed, 2 times ago, I was in my robe and I was yelling at y'all about y'all not watching stuff on the YouTube, and y'all have been better. So I did put on some clothes this time. So that I just wanted to acknowledge, I'll call you out when it's not right, but I will also acknowledge what is good. So thank you. Tell your friends still, but I see you and I appreciate it.
We see you. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful time. Watch a lot of X-Men, and we'll see you back here soon. Peace.
Bye.